Good evening to you. I'm Evan Watson, and welcome to The Story. Let's get straight to our big story tonight. We're in the home stretch of election season, less than 3 weeks to go now. Your ballots are in the mail, and soon, if you live in Portland, you'll get to rank your choices for the first mayor under the new form of government. Last night, we heard from the top 5 candidates for mayor, Commissioners Mingus, Carmen Rubio, and Rene Gonzalez, along with Osthus and Keith Wilson, in our KGW mayoral debate with The Oregonian. We asked the candidates where they stand on the top issues facing the city: homelessness, public safety, and economic recovery. Tonight, we're going to bring you some of the highlights of the debate, starting with homelessness.
This is a raise your hand for you all. Raise your hand if you believe the threat of jail time or time in jail is necessary as one strategy to compel some unsheltered people to accept shelter and seek services. Necessary as one strategy. That's everybody except Ms. Osthus. Ms. Osthus, why not?
I don't see the carceral system as serving any benefit to a person who's already vulnerable. I would like to see there be abundant housing and abundant services, well staffed to support those people. Maybe alternative shelter for people who really don't want the shelters we offer. Beyond safe rest villages, maybe like Right to Dream 2 type of model. But we have a lack of criminal defense attorneys. That whole system is suffering. Jail is not a place for anybody suffering from addiction or poverty.
Thank you. Another raise your hand here for all candidates.
David,
here.
may I
Mr. Wilson,
please?
just briefly, go ahead.
Just to apply the 30 seconds. So yes, jail time, we have to enforce our codes without a doubt. There has to be that threat. We don't necessarily want to arrest someone, but we also are missing that very important link. We have to provide shelter first. So just going to rest, just using tough love without providing shelter is missing one of those very important resources to allow our city to function properly. We've done it in the past. We need to do it again. Provide shelter first. And then if arrest comes to it, then so be it. But we can't let or leave people on the street.
Thank you, Mr.
Can I
Wilson.
use my
Another
30
raise your hand.
seconds?
Of course, Mr. Gonzalez, go ahead.
With all due respect, I appreciate Keith's focus on congregate shelter, but his plan is going to make it worse. It's going to lead to people dying in congregate shelter. The acuity we see on our streets with untreated mental illness and addiction will lead to people dying if we don't have closely monitored medical intervention in our shelter system. He's trying to sell a cheap model. It's also going to breed chaos and crime to neighborhoods. We have invested a lot in our shelter's security in the areas around it. It's an essential component to intervention here. So trying to sell us something on the cheap and then bad-mouthing the people who want to enforce the law is not good enough, Keith.
Another question for all the candidates: where do they stand on handing out tents and tarps to people living outside?
Raise your hand if you believe the city or county should hand out or provide funding to groups that hand out tents or tarps. Anyone? Ms. Rubio, why?
I believe that right now in today's world where we're facing elements, I think it's cruel to not allow certain life-saving equipment or gear when needed, for example, before an ice storm or a winter storm. So in certain situations, it is appropriate because we have to think of the person and the lives at stake.
Thank you. One more raise your hand here. Raise your hand if you believe the city of Portland should continue to fund the Multnomah County Joint Office of Homeless Services. Should continue to fund. It's everybody except Mr. Gonzalez and Mr. Mapps. Mr. Mapps, why not?
This is something I've been clear on during my entire time on council. The city of Portland needs to be focused on reducing the absolute number of people on the streets. I'll tell you, the county is fundamentally interested in trying to solve for a different problem, which is to avoid people falling into homelessness. That's an important problem, but it's not the problem that the city is trying to solve. Also, the city hands over tens of millions of dollars to the county every year, but we have no benchmarks for what those dollars are going to be spent on. I think this is unacceptable. In order to solve this problem, the city and the county have to work together, but we have to have a clear understanding of what the city does and what the county does. And I will tell you, the agreements that we've worked out with the county over the last several years don't do any of that. And frankly, that is one of the reasons why we see so many tents on our streets.
Next question: Portland Police. The new mayor will be in charge of hiring a police chief. So what vision do the candidates have for the city's police force?
It is true we need to have more policing, and it would be easily funded by just taking away from the overtime that so many of our cops are being paid right now. That's very, very expensive to have too few police officers, and they're working too hard and they're getting burned out. I do think the recruitment arm of it, I am curious why we have so many applicants and so few of them actually get through the background check process. I'm wondering what that background check looks like, City of Portland is very clear. Portlanders are clear about what they want in a public safety officer and what they don't want. So I'm hoping to really partner with ad campaigns to make sure that we get the right people applying that can navigate these very difficult background checks.
I absolutely believe that a city our size should have about 1,200 police officers. We've authorized 885 additional police officers, and we've set aside those funds. So actually, I believe that we can get there. We can increase our force to about 900 literally in the next year. I will tell you, I've also had conversations with the folks in our police bureau who deal with hiring and training, and I have a high degree of confidence that in my first year, I can hire 100 police officers. Now, I'm also aware that the police chief has come forward with his recommendation that we should have about 1,000 police officers. I'll tell you right now, I don't know where we come up with the dollars for that extra 100 police officers to get us to from 900 to 1,000.
Most important right now is that we have to alter the path in terms of retaining police officers. We've seen incredible attrition from the riots in 2020 going forward. We have simultaneously made some improvements in recruiting. Our pipeline is growing. We have made some changes in state law that's assisting on that. Our academies are filling up, and every swearing-in ceremony, I'm seeing a more diverse workforce entering Portland Police. But our biggest pain point right now is on the retention side of Portland Police, and is essential that your next mayor is a strong advocate for Portland Police, that stands up to them when the loud extremists in our community go after them, as they're apt to do more often in our community.
What are those officers doing during the course of their day? So 50% of the arrests in Portland are of the unsheltered. So again, end unsheltered homeless, provide basic nighttime care, provides care for our sheltered and for our community at large, because providing basic shelter lowers that arrest rate to 2%. We've got a cycle where we're arresting the same few people over and over again, which is denying safety to all of us.
I absolutely believe that we do need to scale up our officers to match the growth of our city as well. And that requires that we fill our vacancies first. Once we've filled our vacancies, as others have mentioned, Chief Day has put out there his plan to scale up the force over the next few years, not just 1 year, over a few years. And so I am going to defer and listen to Chief Day on this because he's the expert. And so I'm very interested in following his plan.
We hope that gave you a taste of each of the candidates there. There was a lot more they talked about, including Portland's recovery from the pandemic and how to help downtown. If you want to hear the candidates' ideas about converting downtown offices to housing or lowering the tax burden for Portland businesses, you can watch the full debate on your schedule. It's up right now on KGW.com, our KGW YouTube channel, or download the KGW Plus app. And a bit of a twist in the race for mayor. An Oregonian poll shows that dark horse candidate Keith Wilson is now best positioned to win in November. Take it with a grain of salt, though. The poll shows that a large percentage of Portland voters are still undecided. DHM Research surveyed 300 Portlanders earlier this month, and they used the same ranked choice voting system that we will all be using in November. After each round of counting the votes, the candidate ranked as people's first choice, the least, was dropped, and the vote that would have gone to that candidate is then moved to the next candidate in each voter's ranking. You can see for a majority of the tabulation rounds, Wilson is second to Rene Gonzalez, but a majority of Carmen Rubio's supporters appear to see Wilson as a more viable second choice than Gonzalez. So votes that would have gone to Rubio went to Wilson in the last round of counting. By the end of the process, 53% of those polled chose Wilson over Commissioner Gonzalez at 47%. When we contacted the Wilson campaign, Wilson says it's clear Portland is looking for a different type of mayor and that he's ready to bring everyone together to solve the issues facing our city. Now, the Oregonian's reporting says nearly a third of those surveyed were undecided on who to pick for mayor. That could swing a lot, so there's still a lot up in the air. But this morning, Willamette Week endorsed Wilson as their first pick, with Rubio as their second and Gonzalez as their third. They wrote in part, "Neither of Wilson's leading opponents have articulated a homelessness strategy that we can stomach. They offer voters the familiar binary choice between cruelty and inaction." Wilson's plan is refreshingly grounded on what other cities are doing. Over the past 3 years, he's traveled to cities across the country to research best practices when it comes to sheltering unhoused people. Wilson is running a campaign focused largely on his lofty goal of ending unsheltered homelessness within 1 year of taking office. The main way he says he will accomplish this is through the use of night shelters. Here's his response from last night's debate when asked about that.
We're wasting hundreds of millions of dollars right now, and we're getting nothing, no results, there's no accountability. It's not ambitious to want to care for our community. And about 6 years ago and previous, we always relied on nighttime emergency shelters, and we closed them all. Shane, you wrote an article just this last week, your colleague Lillian wrote an article that Boston only has nighttime shelters. We have none here in Portland. Philadelphia only uses nighttime shelters. We have none. We elected to close them. All I'm doing is using a basic model that's used in most cities in the United States with far lower unsheltered rates than we have. That's not extraordinary. That's not far-reaching. That's just caring for our community.
Last week, the Oregonian unenthusiastically endorsed Commissioner Gonzalez as their first pick, calling him the best of a group of flawed candidates. Commissioner Rubio was their second pick. They did not endorse a third pick. We want to know what you think. Did you hear anything during the debate or the endorsements that helped you make up your mind about who to vote for? If so, who are you choosing and why? Send us an email, thestory@kgw.com, or leave us a voicemail, as always, at 503-226-5090. When we come back, Multnomah County's new deflection center is now up and running, but people in the neighborhood and a Multnomah County commissioner say they're frustrated with the way it's been rolled out. Their concerns when The Story returns. It's been 3 days since a new center opened in Portland to help connect people with addiction services. The new Deflection Center on the Central East Side is not a huge hit with people who live and work near there. Blair Best shows how it's already drawing community concerns.
Frustration and signs of fatigue are growing around Multnomah County's Deflection Center, also known as the Coordinated Care Pathway Center. It's been 2 days since it opened off Southeast Sandy Boulevard, and despite the wording of its name, much of the community has a lot to say about the lack of coordination leading up to this week.
So we're getting constant feedback from every property owner around here. And it's not that they don't want it here, they just don't know. It's fuzzy. It's been fuzzy from day one.
The center is meant to be a place law enforcement can drop people off who are caught solely with possession of hard drugs and get them connected to recovery services. In a Wednesday morning news conference led by County Commissioner Sharon Myron, community leaders pointed out some obvious flaws in that plan.
No one disputes that we do not have services available to deflect people to.
And what Commissioner Myron means by that is since there's a lack of treatment beds in Multnomah County, many taken to the Deflection Center could end up right back on the streets.
Opening the center is not the end of the controversy here. I think it's the beginning of the rest of the nightmare.
Despite the center opening Monday, there is still no signed good neighbor agreement between people like Jens Knutson and the county.
There has been significant positive support for deflection, but this is not the model that we feel will succeed.
One of the sticking points on the good neighbor agreement is the county's steadfast refusal that it would ever be binding.
David Watnick is the attorney representing a neighboring preschool where his children go. The school is now spending thousands out of pocket on security upgrades and staff Narcan training in anticipation of what the Deflection Center could bring to the neighborhood.
We want this treatment to work. We want people to receive help. I also want to feel safe with my kids here every day.
The community calling on the county for increased security patrols around the site, daily data around how many people are being served, and more neighborhood meetings.
What we want is to know and go forward with confidence that we do not need to police the situation.
It's incredibly disheartening, and it feels like pretty hopeless.
Those behind the Deflection Center ask for patience.
The rush on opening up deflection and having a center causes there to be some limitations in the beginning. What we have to remember is that this is an iterative process, which means it's going to get better with time. This is step one out of a multi-step process.
We learned late today that police have dropped off 2 people at the center since it opened on Monday. A spokesperson for the Multnomah County Chair says the county is taking every measure to provide safety to the Buckman neighborhood, including 24/7 security, and they are committed to finalizing a good neighbor agreement. The county has held meetings with some community members about the Deflection Center, but the community says no meaningful change has come from those meetings. Still ahead, inside the lab simulating the effects of tsunamis, what their research shows could happen to towns along the coast when the big one hits, and how they're currently helping local governments make changes to keep people safe. We're continuing our Environment Northwest series tonight, When the Earth Shakes, all about the big earthquake poised to one day rattle the Northwest. So far in our series, our team has shown you how fault lines and subduction zones work. We've shown you how experts are working to monitor seismic activity around the region. And tonight, environmental reporter Cale Williams is taking us inside one of the biggest threats posed by earthquakes, tsunamis.
This is footage earlier on when the earthquake has hit.
It's not a matter of if.
You don't know when this is going to happen.
But when?
It's just to get to high ground as soon as you can.
Since January of 1700, tension has been building in the Cascadia subduction zone. That's where tectonic plates under the ocean are slowly sliding under the plate beneath the North American continent. And at some point, it's going to pop.
Then one day it releases all that tension, all that stress is just released. The second plate lifts up, pushes the water out of the way, and that's what creates the tsunami.
That's Dan Cox, professor of coastal and ocean engineering at Oregon State. And he said you don't have to go back to 1700 to see what a tsunami would look like on our coast.
I was actually in Japan after the 2011 tsunami, and I walked through town after town.
On March 11th, the magnitude 9 Tohoku earthquake shook the ground for nearly 6 minutes. Within half an hour, a wall of water washed ashore. Seawalls were easily overcome. Entire villages in the mostly rural areas were washed away. Combined, the earthquake and tsunami killed more than 18,000 people.
And the damage there is probably going to be very similar to what we saw here for that magnitude 9.
If the entire Cascadia subduction zone were to rupture, the ground on the coast is expected to sink by up to 6 feet. The following tsunami could see waves up to 40 feet high, and they could last for hours after the shaking stops. Many low-lying towns would be inundated.
Parts of the coast I worry about is where the people are.
That includes places like Seaside, Neskowin, and Warrenton. The state estimates a tsunami could wipe out areas that are home to some 22,000 people.
Wood frame buildings, residential structures, houses, they really don't fare well. And so the expectation is most of them are going to get washed away.
And estimated deaths from a Cascadia quake range as high as 10,000, with half of those caused by the tsunami.
That would be extremely devastating.
But there are people working on ways to lessen that death toll.
So we test extreme conditions, tsunamis and storm surge and big hurricane waves.
Pedro Lomonaco is the director of the O.H. Hinsdale Wave Research Laboratory at Oregon State.
We are really passionate on waves and how that works and what we call coastal engineering. No?
It's one of the largest and most advanced wave testing facilities in the country, home to a large wave basin and a long flume with a wave generator at the end. When we visited, a team of researchers from Louisiana State and the University of Hawaii running an experiment on how different types of debris behave in a tsunami.
What kills you in a tsunami is the debris, not the wave itself.
Each of those yellow blocks represents a 40-foot shipping container. And the metal rods, affixed with sensors to record the strength of impact, represent a building along the coast. Once the containers are set up...
Okay, you guys ready for me to run this wave?
Yes, we are.
The wave generator pushes a wall of water down the flume. And the containers, well, they crash right into the building. It may not look impressive, but when you imagine each of those blocks as a 40-foot container, it's easy to see the destruction tsunamis can cause.
Ooh.
And the data collected here has real-world impacts.
Will these have the potential to change building codes on coasts and that type of thing?
It already has done it.
Lomonaco said results from similar experiments conducted last year have already helped change building codes around the country.
To me, it's one of the fastest answers that we have seen. Normally, fundamental research takes years to trickle all the way to the building code. This case was really fast.
Now, if you live on the coast, what happens in a lab on a college campus might not be all that reassuring. For those folks, Dan Cox offered some advice. Start making a plan now.
It takes about 15 to 30 minutes, depending on where we are, till that first wave hits the coast.
That means mapping out an escape route, as well as a plan to reunite with loved ones after a tsunami hits. And while there still is a lot of work to do, Cox said the Pacific Northwest is in a much better place than it was even a decade ago.
When I was first here, there was like not even awareness of it. Then it was like, well, we're aware, but we don't want to do certain things. And now it's like all options on the table. Let's try to figure it out. So it's been very, took a little while, but I think people are like really taking it to heart and try to figure it out.
Cale Williams, KGW News.
Well, that is the end of our show for tonight. Thank you very much for watching. Tomorrow night at 6:30, we'll have a pregame show before the Seattle Kraken's game right here on KGW. We'll be back on Friday with the last of our Environmental Northwest series and plenty more. I hope to see you then.